All right. Guys, thanks for joining another Australasian Tectum AMA for Thursday, the 8th of December. We have our special guest on today, Nevena Glogovac, who is a legal representative who specializes throughout Europe, but has a broad knowledge across Web3 in general. So we'll jump across to some questions from Nevena shortly. As always, we will do a brief overview of Tectum and what we're operating with at the moment, just to refresh the memory of everyone. We've always got a couple of new faces on the call, so it's good for those guys, and it's also good just for people to get used to explaining it when out and about and chatting to people and the like. So I will just, where's my screen share gone? There we go. Cool. So Tectum, the fastest blockchain in the world, obviously a huge claim to fame. And the first question that most people ask is, well, how do you do that? And the answer to that is a combination of two predominant technologies is the main reasoning. So we use a different consensus method. So most people are familiar with proof of work, which is what Bitcoin uses, proof of stake, like Ethereum. There's proof of history, proof of authority. What Tectum use is a proprietary technology called proof of utility, POU. And what proof of utility does is it allows essentially less nodes are required to approve a transaction, whereby we have master nodes and then lower level nodes. And it also allows us to break the blockchain up into multiple layers. And what we do then is on the lower layer of the blockchain, that's where we store all of our information. And the way that we store our information is where we introduce the second technology, which is hash drive technology. Now, many blockchains use hashing. That's nothing too new. However, the way that we use it and the way that we integrate it with proof of utility is what makes us unique and is what makes Tectum a very efficient network. So the lower layer, what we're doing there using the hash drive is that we basically take a skeleton imprint or like an X-ray of the data that we are bringing across from the native network, whether that be Bitcoin or Tron or Ethereum, whatever the case, we are taking just a very lightweight, only a 32-bit block, skeleton hash of the data, and then we store it on that lower layer, and we're storing it almost in the same way that you would archive files. What that does is it leaves the upper layer free for our nodes to focus on transaction speed. And by doing this, we actually achieve some pretty phenomenal speeds. You can see here, we've got a hard cap of 10 million tokens. We've sold 3.6, nearly 3.7 million of those tokens. And we're going to reach our next soft cap at 4 million, which is when the token price will increase again. So there's 320,000 until we reach that. And we've got over 40,000 registered wallets now. So to go back to the speed, everyone is familiar with Bitcoin. Now, what a lot of people don't realize is Bitcoin transacts at around 7 transactions per second. We've got Ethereum that we're doing around 25 transactions per second before their merger. A lot of people are also familiar with Ripple. Ripple are known for being quite fast, particularly when they first came out, and they sit at around 1,500 transactions per second. Tron is a really interesting one because what Tron have done, they basically took the USD stablecoin and they've made it cheaper and faster, which is an incredible concept because this is one of the fundamental flaws with crypto in its original state, is that it can be a little bit slow and a little bit expensive to transfer funding around. So what Tron have done is quite admirable, and they do that sitting at around 2,000 transactions per second. You've then got guys that really started kicking the bucket, and they're sitting up, in the hundreds of thousands. You've got Phantom and of the likes, 300,000 transactions per second, so getting quite fast. But no one's sitting quite as fast as Tectum, who are doing over 1 million transactions per second. Now, that's where we sit comfortably. In testing, we actually reached a peak performance of 1.38 million transactions per second, but we comfortably say that we can sit around a million. Now, that's the blockchain, which is basically just the foundation of what we sit on, what Tectum is most proud of and where we see us really changing the way of the game is with our SoftNote system. Now, SoftNote is a container to transfer digital assets around. So you can see here this image. This shows SoftNotes where there's varying currencies. We've got Bitcoin, Tron, so on and so forth. And what's really exciting about these is the way that we can transact or transfer and move them around, both peer-to-peer and peer to merchant. So in this instance, we've got Bitcoin. So for example, say we want to load some Bitcoin onto these, and then I want to send this to a friend of mine. I can basically send this to them via any messaging application. So that can be WhatsApp, that can be Facebook Messenger, Telegram, text message, any platform where I can send a photo message, or I can even send it as a link as well. If I really wanted to, I can actually print these out and I can hand them over to people physically, just like cash. So when the sender sends a soft note to someone, they also send along a 6-digit passcode. Now, the recipient who receives that, they will either scan the QR code or they'll click on the link. And what's going to happen is it'll open up a SoftNote browser. Now, the SoftNote browser should look just exactly like this one. Now, if we take a closer look at the SoftNote, we've got the Bitcoin logo up here. We've got BTC. That tells us the currency that we're dealing with. Down the side here, we've got the serial number. Now, the first 5 digits of that serial number, that represents the currency. So the currency being number 1 for us is Bitcoin. Number 3 is Tron, for example, so on and so forth. We can even load fiat onto these if we wish. The rest of the numbers here are the serial number that is the unique identification of this particular soft note. So we can see here 1222, which aligns with what's up the top of the screen, 1222 there. On the other side of the soft note, we actually have an address. Now, that is the Bitcoin address where the value of this soft note is actually stored. So taking a look at the value, we've got 0.0004, which is roughly speaking around about $7 or $8 right now. Now, say for example, somebody sends this to me and I want to know, well, how do I know that there's actually any Bitcoin associated with this note? Well, we've got the proof of funds button. So when we click on proof of funds, that's going to open a blockchain explorer, and the blockchain explorer is going to show me this address. Now, if we feel like double checking, we can see that address, which starts in 3HW and ends in EVZ. If we come back here, we've got 3HW, ends in EVZ. That looks like the same address there. Now, in that wallet, there is sitting around $95 US dollars worth of Bitcoin. Now, as we said, this is worth about $7 or $8 right now. So we can see that the funding is actually backed up by that wallet. And what the store of value that sits upon this soft note, it's almost like a caveat is written back to that wallet, whereby that money can't be transferred out of there because we have the ownership of it on the Tectum blockchain. Now, how do these soft notes come about? There's 2 stages. So the native token of the Tectum platform is TET, T-E-T. Now, the utility of TET is to mint soft notes. That is its primary function, is the ability to be able to mint the soft notes themselves. Now, as an introductory offer, 1 TET token will mint 100 soft note pack, a 100 soft note pack, which will have varying denominations in it. So the soft notes are set up to have similar values to the fiat system, where you've got like $1, $2, $5, $10, $20 notes, $50 notes, and it goes up to about a $200 note. Now, that's what will be in the 100 pack that comes as a standard. However, we can also make custom soft notes as well. So say, for example, I want to load a whole Bitcoin onto a soft note, then I can simply take one of my TET, and I will mint the soft note. Now, based on the value of what that soft note is as a custom one, it'll cost me a percentage of whatever that face value is going to be. And that will mint this soft note. And then essentially the second part is that it needs to be emitted or have the liquidity provided to it. So in both of those instances, both the minting and the liquidity providing, there's two licenses that are formed. So the person who holds the minting license and the person who holds the liquidity providing license, they are actually going to earn off the system as their notes move around in circulation. Now, for users, both peer-to-peer and peer-to-business, they are going to have no fees. So it's actually free to use, other than actually creating the soft notes, minting them, and moving your original currency over to the platform. Once it's sat over here and you've loaded it up onto the soft note, there's no fees for exchanging them. There's no fees for paying with them. There's no fees for receiving them or anything like that. Now, the only fees that are involved is the actual merchants, the business who are receiving them into their business. Just like if they are receiving a credit card payment or a debit card payment with Visa, MasterCard, American Express, they'll typically pay kind of 2 to 3%, sometimes 4%, for having the service available to them to be able to receive funding into their business via that method of transport. Similar with SoftNote, however, our promise is that we'll always be cheaper than that, and we'll sit around the 1% mark as a fee for the merchant to receive the SoftNote into their business. They are obviously profiting off it, and that's the way that the actual system will generate an income or revenue for Tectum itself. Now, the minting license, they are going to receive 20% of every 1% fee for the entire life cycle of the soft note. And that's the same with liquidity provider. So if you both mint your soft note and you provide the liquidity to it, then you will receive 40% of the 1% merchant fee for the entire life cycle of that soft note. Now, at first hand, that might not seem like a whole lot. For a $100 transaction, you're going to receive 20 cents. But when you take into consideration that, there's still bills floating around, that have 20, 30, even 40 years old. If you pull out some of the coins and notes in your wallet right now and you check the year that they were actually minted, you'll find that some of them are quite old. So if you imagine every time that note goes through a transaction throughout the year, it starts to add up. And basically, it's going to be passive income that is just rewarding users for being part of the system, for helping fund it and get it off the ground and take it to a place where it's obviously into mass adoption. So where we see the SoftNote being so unique and usable is that we want to create a global payment system. And as I mentioned earlier, the thing with crypto is that typically it's quite slow. And it can also be quite expensive in that, if I want to go and buy a coffee and it's going to cost me $5, and I'm just transferring regular Bitcoin on the Bitcoin network, then it's going to cost me $3 or $4 to transfer that $5, which all of a sudden now that coffee costs me $9. So it's not very practical in that sense. There are some other networks out there that are trying to speed up this process. However, they are still operating through the native network. So they're still creating a new block on the Bitcoin blockchain. And so there's still fees associated with that. Though they're faster, there's a lot of reports out that they aren't so reliable. There's a lot of system failures, and there's both consumers and retailers are unsure of the trust that they have in these systems, the reliability of them. So what we're doing with SoftNote is we're actually taking those transactions away from the native network. We're not creating a new block on the Bitcoin network. We've moved it onto Tectum, which is ridiculously fast, and then we've transferred the value onto SoftNote. So in that ecosystem, the payments, instead of just being cheaper and faster, they're instantaneous and free. So for where we see cryptocurrency crossing that retail barrier into mass adoption, we believe that this is a genuine solution to be able to do that. So that's a bit of an overview of Tectum and the SoftNote product. And from here, guys, what we will do is we will jump across to Nevena, who has a few questions about how this is all going to work.
Hello, Brendan. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here. And if I can, before I introduce myself and get into the questions, I just want to say while listening to you introduce the product, I was thinking how it's so important to hear about the product directly from the people who are developing it, instead of just to rely on information that you find on website. Because the way you explain it now and the way that you've initially explained it to me, like I get to clearly and simply understand the mechanism behind Tectum and what makes it so unique, what makes it so valuable. So thank you for that. And also, in your introduction, you mentioned retailers and how this product could serve to them. And I think this is the main reason why I'm so happy to be discussing these legal implications of Tectum with you, because I also see a huge application of it in retail industry. And in the company where I work, retailers are my primary clients. So I'd absolutely love to talk about it. I think,
Fantastic.
yeah, I think Brendan has said enough about me. I mean, I do legal consultancy. Web3 is in my domain of interests, along some other things, primarily also taxes, which is why I'll probably have some questions from that perspective as well. But maybe we can just get into it so we don't, overboard it with introductions.
Not a worry.
Okay, so basically, the way I understand it, Tectum works like every other blockchain environment. Like it's a decentralized blockchain. So basically, its nodes, they can be located anywhere in the world. So that means that every transaction that takes place on Tectum blockchain, it can cross all sorts of jurisdictional boundaries across the whole globe. So basically, it can be subject to conflicting legal frameworks. So how does your product ensure that you're legally compliant with all these different jurisdictions and legal regimes?
Yeah, sure. Very, very valid question. So both Tectum and SoftNote have kind of multiple business offerings, and the two primary functions is that we've got SoftNote, and then we've also got SoftNote Swap. So they're two separate businesses. Now with SoftNote, it will be KYC and AML regulated, whereas SoftNote Swap, that's totally decentralized without any co-enterprise elements that actually link it back to ChrisMind. So regarding SoftNote, all information is recorded and submitted to AML legislation in the US, which means that we have the capacity to comply with all of the legislation in the given country where the transactions are taking place. For example, we'll have MSB licenses for all of the states in the US, FCA licenses in the UK, and all the other relevant licenses for the other areas that we're operating in. With SoftNote Swap, for the US, regarding fintech, FinCEN legislation states that if there are no co-enterprise elements relating to the business functioning back to ChrisMind, and the company cannot seize or control the funds that are operating on the system, then the system is actually not bound by AML procedures. So SoftNote Swap functions exactly as Bitcoin and physical cash, where it's untraceable and therefore completely community controlled. So within those countries where Bitcoin and physical cash are banned, we expect that SoftNote Swap will also be banned as well.
So basically, the scope of your product is pretty huge, because I don't think there are many countries in the world where crypto is banned. Like I can think maybe around 10 off the top of my head. I think there's China, there's Egypt, there's probably India, Mexico. I think in Europe, maybe it's just North Macedonia. I think Kosovo is thinking about it. Turkey, I think, is very opposed due to the things that are happening with their economy. But obviously, the application of Tectum, where it can be applied, is much bigger than where it cannot. And I think that's going to be useful to many retailers. They're operating globally. So for them, it matters that they can cross these boundaries across the continent. So I think that's really amazing to hear. So there's another thing that I think I've read this claim on your website. So you say that Tectum blockchain guarantees absolute anonymity. So basically, payments are not registered in any native network ledger, and you can't trace Bitcoin transactions by a public address. So I guess what I wonder is, what happens when the authorities require that transactions must be trackable? Let's say tax authorities, they may say, we need to be able to track these transactions for tax reporting purposes, for anti-money laundering purposes. So what if a specific country's tax administration, let's say, requires knowing the transaction's location?
Yeah, sure. So again, looking at SoftNote, which will be KYC, for the SoftNote model, all of the AML legislation can be abided by. All of the records and transactions can be downloaded for any user or business account. And then with SoftNote Swap, just as with cash or Bitcoin, and it's the same here in Australia, the user is actually responsible for keeping a record of their own transactions for both tax and AML purposes.
Oh, okay. So if I can add my insights on this, because I think both of your solutions respond well to the demands that I've heard exist already in the taxing realm across the world, each in their own way. But recently I was doing research about how taxes in metaverse might be incurred. So, and I've learned that it's expected that they'll be incurred on the basis of the physical location of the taxpayer. So clearly, if a blockchain platform is making it impossible for tax authorities to uncover, taxpayer's identity, taxpayer's location, the tax authorities, they can't impose a specific country's tax or their tax rules on them. But on the other side, what I've learned is that many tax authorities are already opting to transfer this obligation to vendors who are using blockchain. So it's more likely that the vendors will need to develop, just like you said, they'll need to develop these customer ID and data systems that will permit them to gather this real world information about their clients and so they can meet these tax payment and reporting requirements. So whether that's on the basis of billing address, their bank details, their IP addresses. So I think your solutions, each in their own way, respond to these demands, however tax authorities decide to handle it. So it's important to have these options.
Correct. And obviously, you've got to be really careful with, anything that is completely decentralized. It's funny how much they track and know what's going on. You might think you're doing something that they don't have eyes on, but there's eyes everywhere. So you really have to be diligent in, keeping records of everything that you're doing, because come taxation time, if you don't declare something, it can obviously come back and bite you on the bottom. So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's so important to understand that even absolute anonymity has relativeness to it, however ridiculous it sounds. But yeah, while we're talking about, blockchain and its functions and the components that are used within it, I think we could maybe tackle smart contracts a bit as well, if you agree. So we know that they can be created and they can be deployed by blockchain by anyone. So what happens when a party is unable to perform their obligations under a smart contract on the Tectum blockchain, for example, due to it malfunctioning, due to malfunctioning of the smart contract, or if there are issues in transferring crypto, or if the access to Tectum blockchain is compromised. So is Tectum blockchain allowing these parties in particular to claim protection on these grounds?
Yeah, right. So the Tectum blockchain, as it relates to SoftNote model, it only allows smart contract to be created by ChrisMind, the company. So within that context, where a customer has to be KYC'd, we offer buyer protection for any non-functioning software or smart contracts. So they will be protected in that regard. And regarding the SoftNote swap model, or the Tectum blockchain as a whole, which that will be open to other developers. If a user decides to engage with a smart contract with a third-party developer, the sole responsibility for that engagement will lie with that user and the third-party developer. So in those circumstances, Tectum functions, purely as a base blockchain provider, as would be the case with like ERC20, for example.
Right. So if I understand it clearly, basically you have two different business models with different regulations to them, where you're basically offering opportunity to the buyers, your customers, to basically weigh out the benefits and risks of each before making a decision which product to use. So
Exactly
I
right.
also
So if you are willing to be KYC'd, then you have that buyer protection. If you want to be completely decentralized, then you're obviously running the own risk is yourself.
yeah, clear, absolutely. Thank you. I think I finally started understanding the way these two separate models work. And
Great.
also another thing that another concern that I hear and see being raised often in this space is, a huge problem about blockchain platforms is that once you store data on them, that kind of data, it can be easily deleted or altered. I'm not saying it's impossible, but it's not easy. And for example, in the EU, because that's the legislation that I'm most familiar with, each consumer, they have the right to be forgotten. So basically they have a right to have any sort of private information removed from internet searches and all sorts of directories. So they have the right to request for their data to be deleted or altered. So does Tectum have solution for this risk, of consumer data being exposed because their transaction history is supposed to be permanent on the blockchain?
Yeah, sure. So again, that's really applicable just to SoftNote itself. So the customer's personal information, it's not stored on the blockchain. The only data that's actually stored on the blockchain itself is the SoftNote, the serial number, and the SoftNote passcode. And the personal information of the consumers is that are KYC'd in the wallet model. That's just stored in our database, same as Binance, for example. But once a user would like us to delete their personal information from our system, it can be completely wiped. Now, of course, the data relating to the wallet, the transactional history and everything, that will still remain on the blockchain. It's encrypted in the blockchain, but the personal information will no longer be linked to that. So that'll basically just be data, but who knows who it's from once we've deleted their KYC information out of the system. So in that regard, we're not violating the GDPR legislation, etc. And basically it's it operates the same way that that kind of medical records do, in digital-based epidemiological studies. When we look at the SoftNote swap model, as we've mentioned there, there's no personal information that's actually recorded, so we're not upsetting any legislation in that regard.
Yeah, okay. I understand that. And I find it interesting that you've given the example of Binance. I've actually had an opportunity to chat with them at the recent Web Summit at Lisbon in Portugal. And,
Oh, great.
they're not the only ones that I've gotten to chat with. I literally had a task of walking from stand to stand and talking to enterprises, big and small, to startups and huge retailers. And when I was talking about the future of Web3 utility and how they intend to utilize Web3 and its components, including blockchain in the future. So, they were telling me about the objectives that they want to meet. And one of the objectives that kept consistently popping up was exactly this, ensuring data safety, ensuring data privacy. And they really saw great potential for blockchain platforms there. Decentralized environments, I believe everybody knows this, but they're more resilient against things like downtime, data corruption, cyber attacks, and the way blockchain stores transaction data. It's tamper-proof, so the risk of any deliberate modifications of user data through that aren't authorized is significantly reduced as well. So, not to mention the potential of blockchain to hide any sort of personally identifiable information. So, in a way, I think it's expected from anyone that's working with this sort of technology to have at least GDPR legislation in their mind from the very beginning. And I guess that's how it was for you too, or am I wrong?
No, that's exactly right. Correct.
Yeah, so it's amazing to hear how cautious and how companies think ahead of these things. It's great to see that you actually thought about regulating these things before launching the product. You've taken these concerns seriously, so kudos for
Absolutely.
that. And also, while we're on the topic, many countries have laws where it's required that companies get explicit consent from people, from individuals, before they collect or use their data for any sort of purpose. So how does Tectum blockchain ensure the collection and the usage and also the storage of consumer data in this situation? Do you have any sort of privacy policy, what it's like, if you can tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So in any circumstance where we are collecting personal information and we're KYCing a customer, we do require that we get the user's consent to a privacy policy, which the privacy policy, like all privacy policies, are obviously very detailed and they go into a lot of depth, which as a someone in your profession understands, that will be much better explained by actually visiting the privacy policy, which tectum.io/privacy. All of the privacy policy details are there. So normally it's a checkbox that most people just check, but yeah, all of the further details are definitely available to dive deeper into.
Yeah, you said it so well. Oh my God, even though I work in the legal industry, I'm always guilty for just clicking I agree with the terms and conditions. I just assume
You've probably
that
read them that many times.
yes, and I've written a couple, and I'll say that it's a tedious work.
Yeah.
I don't envy anybody who's dealing with them, but they are absolutely important and absolutely necessary in this field of work. So again, to see that you're thinking about it, thinking about how to protect your consumers, you're not just like profit oriented. I can see that this product intends to innovate and to actually make a change for the better. And especially, I see the application being huge in the retail industry. So to hear that you're actually addressing these legal concerns is amazing for me. And I'm sure you thought about other things that I didn't think of initially or didn't include in these questions. And maybe people who are present here have their own concerns that they want to address. And I guess that's why we're here.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate with the questions that you have asked. I'll ask if there's anyone in the audience who has any questions for Nevena while we've got her here. Anyone that wants to ask anything relating to kind of law or taxation or anything like that.
I do have to admit that my taxation knowledge doesn't revolve that much around, income taxes, and maybe it's mostly related to taxes in EU. And recently, I've even been dealing with taxes in crypto world. It's interesting to see how far along the regulation has come. There are huge things happening in terms of regulation of crypto space, crypto assets. In the European Union, there is this new regulation that's being introduced on the regulation of crypto assets, where basically the European Union has found a way to control the issuance of crypto assets, I think, from the next year or from 2024. I'm not sure.
Right.
But, we're finally seeing this space regulated. And I see that maybe smaller companies are more afraid of this sort of regulation because they're afraid of taking over the risks and burdens that come with regulation, because it can be pretty restrictive in environments that are decentralized. But I also, on the other hand, I've talked with huge industry players and retailers, and I've asked them, so how do you feel about these upcoming regulations in this space? And they were like, oh no, legislation is our friend. We're fine with it. We'll comply with it easily. So I think, legislation poses different burdens to different sized companies depending on how much burden they can take. So it'll be interesting to see how it changes space. But I don't think regulating something decentralized is necessarily terrifying or bad. I think I guess it's necessary to protect the consumers, and I see that you have that in mind. So that's always commendable.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as much as we want a completely decentralized system, there has to be some regulation because unfortunately human nature is, greed gets the better of people and
Yeah.
people start trying to, do things that they shouldn't be doing. So there does need to be some kind of enforcement to keep people in line. And I mean, it's really just protection for everyone. So we do have a question that's come in on LinkedIn, which is, what difficulties do you see in the case of SoftNote? What taxes can it expect?
What taxes?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. What difficulties do you see in the case of SoftNote, and what taxes can it expect?
mm, well, the only difficulty that I've mm, gathered that might happen is it really depends on where it might be applied. It will be difficult to apply it in systems where crypto is banned, but we've already tackled this. I don't necessarily see any issues regarding taxes because
Mhm.
the system is transparent. It works along with tax legislation. So there shouldn't be an issue as long as we're dealing with taxes in a country where crypto is allowed. So I don't think it's
Correct.
problematic
Yeah.
in that sense. And I don't
I
know if
think,
you,
yeah, in regards to sales tax and everything, like I know that they have in America, there's varying sales taxes from each state to each state. Here in Australia, we basically have a blanket. It's called GST, goods and services tax, which is just 10% that is included in any goods and services. But that will still operate in the exact same way that it does now. It's just that just because you're paying with cryptocurrency, those taxes and everything will still apply to business. They'll still
yeah,
apply in the exact same manner, whatever is relative to that country.
yeah, it's just the mechanism is slightly different. And some countries, I think primarily maybe in Europe, but they're already thinking about how they can incorporate real-time text reporting on the blockchain platform, build it on top of the blockchain. So I don't think there's going to be any issues with either the tax reporting or tax payments. I think authorities and legislators, they have solutions for these things. So I don't necessarily see issues with tax legislation.
Yeah, great, great. Awesome. Well, if we haven't got any other questions, guys, Nevena, you're welcome to hang around, or if I'm sure you're busy, if you need to shoot off, then feel free. Huge thank you for joining us. Very grateful to have you on board and sharing your insights. It's obviously very valuable to consider all of these things and to point them out. So it obviously just gives. We have got another question here.
Oh, okay.
Do you think that the fees we gain on soft notes will be counted as taxed as dividends, maybe? Besides, I'm thinking, what about the varying price of them over time? From my perspective, that would be the same as like interest earned, interest earned on bank accounts and things like that. Navina, what's your take on that?
I would agree with you, but also like this will depend on how a different country's tax legislation looks at these fees. They might not classify it in the same way, but I do predict that your prediction will probably be the prevalent one. So I agree. I agree.
Yeah, yeah, and in I'm not sure about again. It comes back to the country, but here in
Yeah.
Australia, interest earned is or like dividends, it's considered income, so it's the same as income tax. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen this a lot. Like usually these sort of transactions, they are taxed in a way income taxes are treated. So I would agree. I would agree, and especially I think that's going to be the dominant way of taxing in the U.S. as well. So
Mm.
that's what I
And I
expect.
guess, of course, then if you're operating as a business and you've actually minted and provided liquidity to soft notes through your business, that's going to be the same in that will be considered revenue into the business that could potentially, it'll
Yes,
be pre-tax revenue. So
yes, I
again,
agree.
whatever applies in your country, it'll just be the same as what the fiat system is.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate for vendors who are operating globally. They'll have to really know and understand these different tax systems. But it is what it is. If you're doing business, you have to be prepared for this sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The more you know, the safer you are, right?
Exactly. So, invest in knowledge, invest in good consultants on different
Mm,
areas of law that you need. I'm not promoting my services, but I see the issues that my clients have because they've been refusing for so long to, pay the consultancy services for something that they're not able to gather themselves. Because if you have a retailer who's operating across different continents and like hundreds of countries, they can't keep track of all these regulations by themselves. They need somebody who's specialized. It's a
mm.
niche topic. So, invest in resources and knowledge if you have to outsource. So I guess that's something.
Absolutely. And the funny thing about that is that, and something I've realized myself is not only can that potentially, kind of cost you more money in the long run if
Yeah,
you're hesitant in paying for these services, but the stress as well. Like when you don't know and you're in the dark about things and you're trying to do things yourself and the time that you put into that, and then all of a sudden you end up going, do you know what? I need to get some help, and you pay for some help. It's just this weight off your shoulders, and you're like, why didn't I do this ages ago?
exactly.
So it's the stress and the money that you can save. It's just priceless, I think.
Yeah, you come to an understanding that you could have spent all of that time and all of that energy and effort on doing the thing that's primarily surrounding your business, instead of just worrying about these side things that are of course important and essential to your business, but they're not primarily what you're dealing with. So I absolutely
Mm,
agree.
yeah, awesome, awesome. Thanks again. Appreciate your insight, Nevena. As I said, you're welcome to hang around. We probably haven't got too long left. We'll run over a few other bits and pieces, and then we'll have our competition. But yeah, feel free to get on with your day. And thanks again for joining us.
No, thank you. And if any of your guests, if anybody who's present here ends up having additional questions, of course, they can find me at LinkedIn, same name. So I'm always here to help. Glad that I got a chance to participate and enjoy the rest of the session.
Thank you. Yeah, I will. I'll share your LinkedIn link as well. So if people want to reach out,
Okay, thank you. Bye.
bye now. Awesome, guys. That was some cool insight. Obviously a lot of knowledge, and someone with that kind of experience. It's always good just to get their take on things and make sure that we are on the right track and we're doing the right things and that we're covered for, whatever avenues we're going to kind of step into. So from our side, the only other thing I was going to share with you guys today is just to give you an update on the UI UX development. So the developers are working away. We can see here. So basically, there's these varying screens that the guys are working on. Oh, that's moving around. So yeah, there's a bunch of different functions that need to go into this app, right? Like there's basically I think 7 or 8, maybe even 9 that Alex was talking about, different layers and areas that they need to be concerned with. Like you've got the wallet, you've got the exchange, you've got the mint house, there's accounting, there's all of these different bits and pieces. So this is basically what the guys have been working on, the different screens, different areas, and everything that's happening right now. Obviously they need to build all of these out, and then every little button, every little function needs to operate, which is then integrated back to both our wallets as well as then with the whole SoftNote ecosystem. So you can see here the guys are pumping away. They're trying to make sure that they get this tied up and all finished off before the end of the year. So that is the main focus of what the development team are working on at present, which is all pretty exciting. For me, this really kind of I mean, it's been real this whole time, but it's like this really now is that crossing that last little bridge and really joining the dots. It's making it a proper system whereby all of these functions that the guys have been building over all of this time are actually now coming to a point where they're going to be usable, they're going to be easy, they're going to be fun, and it's all kind of this system is coming into play. So we can see that that's what the guys are pumping away on. Yeah, Javed said UX UI looking great. Yeah, really looks cool. Absolutely. It's really going to give us that professional look, and it's going to give, I think, merchants the confidence to come on board and be able to accept soft notes. You know, when I look at that and I look at the guys who are already come on as merchants, it's like, you know, they're pretty brave coming on and saying, yeah, we'll accept soft notes, when all they really had was the Telegram bot. So once we have this system up and running, it's really going to give us that kind of medium whereby consumers as well as businesses, whether online or in bricks and mortar retail stores, will have the confidence to be part of the system. So that's the main focus of the guys right now. We've also got our 3FA, which I spoke about last week. So that's now becoming quite a big deal. That's we've got our sales guys out there talking to enterprise, to big business about onboarding this, and we've actually got a lot of interest. So we've had, I think, 3 or 4 meetings already this week, and yeah, I myself have another couple of booked. I know Oliver has another couple booked. Ken's been speaking to some guys. Albert has some guys on board. So it's really looking like, it's funny. We've had this 3FA system kind of sitting in the storeroom, just, I mean, we were using it for our own wallets, but it's also another product that Tectum can offer as a security layer for both businesses and their users out there. So that's pretty cool, and it's another way that that we're able to generate revenue, which is going to just help with everything in terms of marketing and carrying us forward up to that listing date. Marco has said, looking great user interface wise. I think after this kind of update, the focus will move on to spreading awareness. Yep. So Marco, that user interface is all done basically through a browser. So once that's all fully operational and functioning correctly as a browser, the focus for the developers will be then integrating that with both Android and iOS. So everyone will be able to use it as a browser, but then to turn it into the actual app, that's that's where there's the whole integration phase, and they basically have to do it for the 2 platforms. But yes, spreading awareness will be huge at that time. And what's going to be beautiful, and it's kind of funny, right? Everybody obviously wanted us to get listed on the exchange as soon as we could, kind of thing. Given the market, we've decided that's not the best idea right now. But what's beautiful about it is that now when we do list on the exchange, all of these other bits and pieces are just going to be more developed, which is going to mean we're going to go to market with an even stronger product, and again, more confidence for big businesses to look at us and take us seriously, as it's not just like, oh, there's another kind of blockchain project that's trying to do something but not really doing it. It's like, no, these guys are serious. They've really got everything kind of evolved and developed to a point where it's actually a complete usable ecosystem. So yeah, pretty exciting times, I think. Good. The app usually has greater reach with anyone who has a phone. Yep. Can't wait to see how it all works. Absolutely. So guys, I'll open up the table. If anyone's got any questions, general questions, any questions before we jump into our tech giveaway competition. Doesn't look like anyone's got anything there. Andrew, have you got eyes on YouTube and LinkedIn at the moment?
Yeah, there is no questions.
Cool. SoftNote, any news? Good question, actually. I will find out about where that's at. Obviously, yeah, we're integrated for the buying purposes rather of Ethereum ERC20, but I will ask about we have our board meeting tomorrow, so that's a good question I will bring up with Alex to find out how far away Ethereum soft notes are. I know that they were looking at it a couple of weeks ago. Oh, we do have one question that's come through here. Where do you see Tectum in 1 year? That's a great question. That's a really cool question. We haven't had that one before. Me personally, I mean, obviously no one can predict the future, but where I imagine and where I envision us being, I think that, quarter 1 next year is going to see a lot of change in the project in regards to, the UI UX and the app being completed, and then which I think is going to open up a lot of merchant onboarding. I would say once we're at that stage that the app is actually developed, we are then going to move out to ISOs, so independent sales organizations, who they already have databases on people who they have provided the services for EPOS, for credit cards, for Visa, MasterCard, and the like. So those ISO companies, they normally have enormous databases, like literally tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of shops, retailers, merchants, online stores, every type of business that you can imagine that is receiving or using rather an EPOS system. So when we're at that stage, probably quarter 1 or quarter 2 next year, we will then go out to these guys who will then basically filter out our product to all of their clients. That is when we will really see some big mass adoption, some big kind of uptake. That's, I imagine that, not only will it mean that the ecosystem is then trading and we're going to see a lot more liquidity come into the project. There'll be a lot more people actually put money onto SoftNotes. We've had over 730, 40 odd SoftNotes have been minted, and around $45,000 worth of Bitcoin has been provided as liquidity onto those SoftNotes. Once we see all of these merchants pour in, a lot more liquidity is going to come into the project, whereby then people can actually use the SoftNote system, right? So in a year's time, yeah, that's an exciting point. I can't wait to see that myself, but I imagine that we will have thousands of merchants, and the value of that token. Wow, who knows what that will be at by then, but that's something I'll be obviously keeping the finger on the pulse. We've got another question here. I hope that answered the question, by the way. $100 by the end of 2023, I predict, from Javed. Yeah, look, I don't think that's unrealistic. I really don't think that's unrealistic. If you look at the likes of what Tron, have done, and if we get to a market cap similar to that, it would put our token at something like $400 or $500. Like, that's not going to happen overnight, but give it a couple of years. There's every opportunity for that to happen. Any update on the community manager role? Yeah, so they've actually hired someone. Actually, he should be starting. I think he's starting on Monday. So we will see that. I will actually be able to announce the name and who he is and what his plans and everything are on next week's AMA. But yes, they've found our guy now. So that was a much lengthier process than what we all thought it was going to be. But they did have like over 500 applicants. And yeah, Trevor and Russell and Lee, those guys were doing like 10 interviews a week there for a while. So yeah, they have found our guy. I'm not sure of his name. Russell just mentioned the other day that they have secured him now. So I will have more news on that next Thursday. Another question here: is it possible to connect UI UX with Amazon ecosystem? I would imagine so. Yeah, Andy. The UI UX will be able, basically, any merchant will be able to have that software, and as long as they've got like an iPad or a computer, any kind of laptop or desktop in their business, then they will be able to use the UI UX interface. So yes, is the answer to that one. Question from LinkedIn. No, we answered that one. Cool. Good questions, guys. That was awesome. I hope I've answered that. If anyone wants any more clarification, then let me know. But otherwise, let's jump into our TED competition. So, as usual, I will ask 5 questions. It's the first fastest correct answer in the chat. So just type your answer straight into the Zoom chat. If you are on any of our other platforms, on LinkedIn or YouTube, jump across to Zoom now, and because that's where the competition is held. So each correct winner will receive 10. Brendan, at least give 2 questions winning to single individual. Javed, buddy, you've won lots. The idea is that we want other people to get involved, and we want to share it out to the community as wide as possible. There are only 5 questions, so one correct winner, one win per day. So you can obviously jump on the American AMA, but yeah, one per day, just to keep it fair, mate. I know that you know all the answers, so realistically, that's not sharing it around with everyone. So we want to spread it as far and wide as we can. So one correct winner per day, and then basically, if you have answered correctly, and no one knows the answer and they need a little bit of help, then feel free to jump in. But yeah, once you've won, we just want to share it around to as many people as possible. And last week that worked really well, and we had 5 different winners. So let's jump into it, guys. Get your typing fingers ready. So question 1, what was the first name of our guest speaker? What was the first name of our guest speaker? There you go, Javed. Well done, buddy. Nevena, and I will just grab her LinkedIn profile in case anybody does have any questions, or yeah, she does specialize in Europe, in the EU. So but yeah, feel free if you need her services, if you want to ask her a question, by all means. I'm going to drop it in the Telegram group chat, because otherwise it's going to disappear from here pretty quick. So that's her LinkedIn profile. I've just dropped it into the Telegram Tectum group chat. I can answer all, of course. Okay, so what are the question number 2, guys? Be ready for question number 2. What are the 2 business offerings of SoftNote? There's SoftNote and what? What's the other one? Correct, Kenneth. SoftNote Swap. So SoftNote Swap is basically our completely decentralized system, whereby there will be no KYC. It doesn't have to be connected to a Tectum wallet, and you can basically be completely anonymous. Question number 3, guys. What is Tectum's consensus method? What is Tectum's unique consensus method? Well done. Whoops, my screen just moved. Mikhail, we haven't seen you before, Mikhail. Welcome, buddy. Nice to have you on board. And yeah, you other guys were correct too. Yuan, Marco, yep, POU, that's correct. But yeah, Mikhail got in first there. Also, guys, do please send to me at Telegram. If I don't have it already, Javed, I've got yours. But anyone else, Kenneth and Mikhail, please send me your Tectum wallet address. So don't send it in here, because it can get lost. So do send it to me on Telegram. Make sure that when you go into your wallet, you click receive, but then make sure that, and you can do it one way or the other, make sure that you've selected TET as the currency, and you don't send me your Bitcoin address. So select TET, click receive, and then copy your wallet address across so that we can get your prize out to you. So question number 4, guys. Question number 4, true or false? Tectum blockchain operates at over 1 million TPS. Marco, Mikhail, you did get in there first, but you do already have one. So that one will go to Marco. Sachi. Well done, guys. And Hamid, you jumped in there too, buddy. Oh, you haven't won one today, Hamid. It's you have to be quick on this last one, bud. Okay, last question, guys. Final question, number 5. For the first 100 merchant businesses who accept SoftNote into their business, what percentage are their fees for the first 12 months? Well done, Hamid. Very good, guys. That's correct as well there, Andy. Hamid did jump in on that one. Awesome, guys. So, yeah, Kenneth, Mikhail, Marco, if you can please send me your TET wallet address, we will get your TET sent out over the next week. Other than that, guys, thanks for coming along. Thanks for playing. Thanks for your questions. We had some good questions today. That was awesome. If you do have anything else that you want to ask, feel free to throw your hand up now, or otherwise reach out to us on Telegram. But otherwise, yeah, enjoy it. Just sent you my address. Awesome. Thanks, Mikhail. Yeah, guys, enjoy the rest of your day, your night, wherever you are in the world. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you next time. Bye, buddy.